If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Listeners, I'm excited to share some good news. Podcast Connections is our brand new episode sponsor. If you feel your book deserves more reach but visibility hasn't come easily, podcast guesting can open the right doors. The team at Podcast Connections gets you in front of the audiences who need your message and your expertise. If podcast guesting is something you're interested in, please contact them at podcastconnections.co and tell them you heard about them on the Book Marketing Mentors podcast. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Steve Markman. Steve has more than 35 years of experience in the speaking and conference industry. Since founding Markman Speaker Management in 1994, he has helped more than 1,000 executives, entrepreneurs, attorneys, consultants, and authors secure speaking engagements worldwide to build visibility and thought leadership. His clients have included IBM, PayPal, Subaru, Bank of America, and Ogilvy PR. Steve also leads workshops on securing speaking opportunities and runs a speakers bureau providing keynote speakers to associations and corporations. Steve, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the show, and thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
Happy to be here, Susan.
Steve, you and I have had long chats about the business, and when authors come to me and I ask them what they want their book to do for them, they always say, I want to get speaking gigs. Let's talk about why speaking is such a powerful way to market a nonfiction book.
Sure. Well, the main reason why I have my business is because people do recognize that it is a powerful way to demonstrate expertise. In some cases, that's not necessarily when you have a book. A book certainly does help, but if you do have a book, it is an opportunity to demonstrate that you have the expertise at a level that enabled you to write a book. So if you have a consulting firm, and most people who are authors and nonfiction authors don't spend 24/7 writing books, right? They are consultants in other professions, and this is a way to add credibility and demonstrate expertise through speaking. And then, of course, speaking allows for a lot of promotion after that.
Yeah, it certainly does. And having been in the business like you for over 30 years, there's a lot going on in this industry, and the credibility that it brings using the book as a tool, though, to get you speaking gigs. Now, for someone who wants to get more speaking gigs or even get speaking gigs, where should they begin?
That's a good question. So it's part art, part science to answer the question, and part sales. The place to look are two different places. It also depends on whether one wants to get paid or not. And when you mention you have authors coming to you and said they'd love to be speaking, oftentimes it's because they see at the end of the rainbow sort of a little bit of a pot of gold. They think, okay, this is a great way for me to extend this book into speaking gigs that can create income for me. The truth of the matter is that the vast majority of speaking engagements, if you put them all in a pot, are unpaid engagements. They are not paid, but I'll talk to you and your listeners for a couple minutes about how to get those engagements and how they differ, paid versus paid, if I can. There's these public events, right, where there are many associations for the most part, or conference companies. And by public, I mean anybody can go to them. They are held in public places, and they typically use many, many speakers, these large conferences and small conferences. And the people who get paid to speak at these conferences are primarily the one or two keynote speakers who are typically well-known people, name folks. They could be in all walks of life. If they're authors, they're usually best-selling authors. And those are the people who get paid. They also get paid from what I call the private sector part of the business, which are companies who will come in, your IBMs and Microsofts of the world, who will bring somebody in to speak on one subject or another. And they will pay because they're a company and they have the budget and the ability to pay, and they expect to pay those speakers, authors, and otherwise. So the best place to look really are basically the internet. And now with AI, you can drum up Claude or Gemini and find a lot of associations and type in conferences on X, Y, and Z. And there's no shortage. There are probably 400 conferences were initiated in the first 5 minutes of this conversation. It's an incredibly busy and popular business these days.
What are some of the key elements that make someone bookable?
It's really content, number one. And I tell people this because oftentimes, even people who write best-selling books, they have no interest in speaking because they're fearful. The fear of public speaking is usually on everybody's top 3 list of fears, right? What I tell people is you don't have to be the best orator in the world. You don't have to be Plato. You don't have to be a great speaker in order to get a speaking engagement. What the organizers are mostly looking for, and this is especially true of the unpaid. We can talk in a few minutes about the advantages of unpaid and how that can lead to pay later on. But the organizers are mostly looking for good content. If it's content that's based on the book, that's great. It also gives the book credibility and it gives the speaker credibility. But that's the most important thing. In a 45 to 60-minute presentation, which is typical, you're going to just want to make sure that your content stands out, that it demonstrates your expertise, that it's different from others, and to have some level of enthusiasm. So while you don't have to be the best speaker in the world, you shouldn't be putting everyone in the first row asleep, or if it's remote, somebody in their home watching. It has to be something that's an interesting topic delivered in an interesting way.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that, because obviously I've seen a lot of speakers like you, and so many of them are like, they're not the greatest speakers, but yet they're great marketers. They know what the audience wants, and hence they get booked.
Right.
So I think what you're saying is perfectly correct. It's like you don't have to be the best, but you do have to have the content and speaking to the right audience. Now, you talked about the unpaid. I'd love you to touch on that, because I remember, and I hear it often, in National Speakers Association, that start off by doing free or unpaid speeches just to get the experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think that the key thing is, what are your objectives? If the objectives are to speak because you have, let's say, a consulting business or a software business, whatever the case may be, and you wrote the book because you want to add credibility to yourself and your business, let's face it, most books are not bestsellers. Most people are not going to become J.K. Rowling. They are going to be, even in a non-business or nonfiction business kind of or self-help kind of book, they're not necessarily going to be flying off the shelves. In order to get your name out there, your business's name out there, and promoting your book so that you do increase sales, you almost have to be willing to do unpaid engagements, unless you're Oprah Winfrey and you tell somebody you're available to speak, they'll be calling her anyway. No, she's not calling anybody. And then you can command six figures. But as I tell my clients, you have to walk before you run, and getting a resume, if you will, of a list of engagements that you can then reference and get testimonials. That's a huge part of speaking for free, because you're getting testimonials and you're building up a reputation and sort of a book of business where you can then, when you are looking for a paid engagement, whether it's for targeting a company or a keynote or at a conference, then you have this reference list and these testimonials of people who have heard you, and they can say, Susan was terrific, best speaker we ever had. And it starts building up, and then you get 6, 7, 8, 10 under your belt, and it makes it easier to get paid. The other thing that's really crucial that people forget or don't realize is that if you do a free engagement to a large conference of 300 people, invariably the majority of the audience, if it's a business conference, are going to be business executives from medium to large companies. And if they call you in to speak, they will pay you. The company will always pay you something to speak at their own company, let's say to their HR or IT managers, what have you. And so the unpaid will lead to paid. It's what I call future income. It's just not getting a check after the speech.
One of the things that I love to talk about are mistakes. And I know this environment is ripe for mistakes. Let's talk about some of the most common mistakes that you see speakers make.
Sure. The number one mistake has to do not with delivery, and there's a whole list of mistakes that people can make. People who are in the profession of helping people speak better can shoot off very quickly. What I focus on in my work and with my clients is the number one mistake in content, and that is doing a sales pitch, doing something that's promotional, that is not just an objective, here's 10 things you need to do to X, Y, and Z type of thing, but they'll do that, and then they'll throw in, and what we do better than anybody, or what we can do is, or we have a great product that does X, Y, Z. And that's the kiss of death in this business, as you know, doing a sales pitch, doing anything self-promotional when it's not asked. If it's asked, if someone in the audience says, well, tell me where I can get your book, then you're answering a question. But if you say in the middle of the speech, or even at the end, by the way, my book can be gotten in Amazon at blah, 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 it's sort of a turnoff. It's a big turnoff, actually, and then you won't get invited back again. And that is the number one complaint of attendees. If someone is criticized, it's for that.
Yeah, because that's not what the objective is. It's not a sales pitch. I mean, if you're speaking well and you're interesting and your topic is relevant to the audience, which, by the way, should be first in terms of this list, that's going to be your sales. I mean, that's your marketing. Exactly. And if people want you,
exactly,
they like what you have to say and they feel that you're going to be relevant to their people, then yes, that's the best part of it. Talk to us more about what meeting planners are looking for when they want to hire a speaker.
The organizers are basically looking for a totality of subjects. It depends on the subject, right? It depends on the conference. It depends on the event. If it's an event that is specific to a certain segment of an audience, so AI is obviously the hottest topic around right now. So if it's a very specific topic on, let's say, AI and cybersecurity, then they will go out and look for or put out a call for speakers that have that level of expertise. And so they're looking for people who have the relevant experience as well as the knowledge. And the most important thing that someone needs to develop when they are speaking, whether they've been doing it for a while or just starting out and aren't aware of this, unless they are the Oprah Winfrey, they have to have a developed presentation abstract, what we call an abstract or a description. 2 paragraphs of what you're going to speak about, and have that at the ready with some bullet points of takeaways the audience will learn, boom, boom, boom. Because that's really important. That's what they're looking for. Specific, what is my audience going to learn? Speaking now of the organizer, what is the audience going to learn? So that is how they will evaluate, first and foremost, whether or not they invite somebody to be a speaker, and does it fit in with the not only theme of the meeting, but with the, as you mentioned before, with the audience, and make sure that if it's an audience of CIOs, for example, it's going to need a different level of sophistication and expertise than if it's speaking to college students at a university where you can't use all the jargon that they won't understand. It has to fit both the audience and the subject matter.
Oh, by the way, that's a great market, isn't it? The college market, the education market.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. I know that there are plenty of speakers who specialize in that area, but it's something that authors can consider. Talk to us more about the materials that you would share with a meeting planner to help them make decisions about whether or not they should hire you.
Oftentimes, there is a formal application that's basically become pretty prevalent over the last 20, 30 years, which is basically a CFS, a call for speakers or a call for presentations, and they will ask in that application for the specific information that they need. If there isn't that application, that formal way to do it, then it could be the head of programming for the local chapter of a national association, whatever the case may be, whatever the vehicle is that you have to submit a proposal to. The ingredients of that proposal, the components of that proposal, consists primarily of two things. One is the presentation description, as I mentioned, the abstract. And by the way, that can be, you could have a book with 15 chapters, and you could probably have potentially 10 or 12 different presentation abstracts based on the different chapters, because it's a different way to slice and dice whatever you're talking about. And each of them might have a way to catch the eye of the organizer and say, oh, that's really drilling down into what this audience needs. And so throw everything at the conference. If it's a big general conference, if it's specific, then submit the proposal that's specific and germane to that meeting. That's number one. Number two is the bio. The bio is very important to establish credibility, to say what you've done, talk about the name and title of your book and what you've done in your career. And I will tell you, Susan, that a lot of people don't realize that it is more important to have experience in whatever business or career you're in than speaking experience for the yes/no decision by the organizer. Again, it depends on if they're a keynote speaker that's being paid, they definitely want someone with speaking experience. And along with that, they'll want a video, not a 50-minute, 45-minute video of an entire presentation, because it'll never be watched, but a 3 to 5 minute snippet of an actual presentation that they've given. Not a podcast interview, but an actual presentation. On the other hand, with the majority of engagements not being paid, probably only 10%, maybe 15% of folks will want to see how good a speaker you are through a video. Again, because they're mostly looking for content, and they'll look at the bio. So in the bio, it's important to talk about not so much where you've spoken, although that's something that an element that could be in the bio, should be in the bio, listing 2 or 3 places, especially prominent places where you've spoken, but primarily what you're doing now and what gives you the credibility to be a speaker beyond the fact that you wrote a book.
And is that a standalone, or is that part of what's known as a speaker one sheet?
A speaker one sheet, I'm going to be a little iconoclastic now. I think it's one of the most overrated documents in the history of mankind. Everybody, for some reason, thinks, and somewhere along the line that got started, that that's what organizers want. by definition, it's one sheet. Sometimes I've seen ones that are all flash and no substance. It's filled with 5 pictures of somebody and a picture of the book jacket and a couple of paragraphs of testimonials, but nothing really about what the topics are. And that's really what they need. I would say you could have a summary one sheet, but that is not enough for sure. You've got to do the elements that I just talked about. And then if you have a one sheet after that, that sort of puts some extra information, maybe you could put some quotes and testimonials in there that you couldn't put in the application, then it's good to have. But when you're applying through the application, most of the time, there's no opportunity to attach anything. You don't even know who it's going to. At the end, you push the button that says submit. It's all done online now. And there's no reason for or opportunity for the speaker, the author, whoever it is, to even submit something unless there's a way to upload something. And that's not often the case.
Now, would that be more for like associations where you're up against multiple speakers who are vying for the same position?
Probably, and mostly, yes. There are other methods that keynote speakers, if someone has the bona fides to be able to be a keynote speaker, and they don't have to get 6 figures, they might be a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 speaker, then they typically would go a different route. And that route would be to find out with some research who the head of the organization's conferences are, if it's an association. If it's a company, then sort of a shooting match of, okay, let's try to figure out who in the company might be bringing in people. It could be the head of a department. It's not always easy to identify who that person is. But once you do identify that person and you develop a relationship with that person and they're interested in you, then you have the opportunity to send via email your information, including the one sheet, the video. Video is the one thing that if they do ask, even in an association conference, that you can upload. That's the one thing that they, because it's obviously easier to do that. But most other documents you can't. But on a keynote slot, when you're talking to the head of conferences, or if it's a small organization, the CEO or whoever it is, then yes, you can send that in. But you still need that description of what you're going to talk about, because they're going to say, well, what are you going to talk about? There are instances where someone will say, hey, I saw your book in a bookstore and I was in a friend's house and they had it on a coffee table. And next thing you know, they're inviting you to speak because they think you are a speaker, even if you're not necessarily one. And they don't ask for the description. They just say, I'd like to have you talk about the book and some of the concepts in the book. But that's not usually the case. Again, the bigger the name you are, the less work you have to do. Without the name brand, though, you have to do a lot of work. It's very competitive. You mentioned the word competition. I would say the paid speakers are business. That side of the business is way more competitive because even though there may be only 1 or 2 paid speakers at an event, whether it's a private or a public event, there are thousands, as you know, of members of the NSA and on speaker bureaus. And by the way, I do have a small speaker bureau listing through my firm, but I would say that anybody who's looking to speak should be listed at multiple speakers bureaus because there's almost no downside to that. It's become a commodity business because so many speakers have their own websites and do their own outreach. But if you get listed and you have to be accepted to be listed by a reputable bureau, that's another way to get noticed.
Yeah, that's a whole other subject, which I know
Correct.
I'd love. I think we should bring you back just to talk about speaker bureaus because
Okay. I have a lot to say
otherwise,
about them too.
I know. It's a big subject that
It
because
is.
people think that, yeah, that's sort of like the magic bullet, but
Nope.
I don't believe that either. Steve, this is a great opportunity and segue for you to tell us about your speaker management services and how our authors could find out more if they want to.
All right. Thank you, Susan. So my website is markmanspeakermanagement.com. You can find my email, phone number, contact sheet right there. Basically, I established my business 31 years ago now to help companies and individuals get their name out, increase exposure, get thought leadership, get credibility as an expert in a field, whether it's a small company or a large company, all industries. And the exact benefits that have been accrued by my clients through the years has really helped them get their name out there. And I think that authors have a great opportunity over a non-author, quite frankly, to get out and speak and help their own business. I have a coaching 5-hour session. It's a part coaching, part workshop where I teach authors and other individuals and small companies how to get speaking engagements, from how to develop the content, which is a lot of time spent on that, to identifying through many different ways the opportunities that are out there and how to stick to it and make sure you have an edge over the others in a very competitive edge. So I have one service where I do all the heavy lifting and do all the work, and another service where I sit down with someone over 2 days for 4 or 5 hours, and I teach them how to get speaking engagements themselves in a fairly rapid fire, but very detailed, hands-on way.
Oh, that's so valuable. So valuable, Steve. Thank you. And we always have our guests leave our listeners with a golden nugget. What's yours?
I think my golden nugget is what I mentioned a while ago, which is basically don't be afraid. I want to encourage everybody out there to go ahead and speak, because a lot of people say, boy, I'm going to get so nervous being in front of people. And I was that way when I was in my early 20s, and it took time, but practice makes perfect and you get used to it. And when you have confidence in what you're saying, it overcomes a lot. And you don't have to be the best speaker in the world. Just have great content and you'll succeed. I think everybody has a speaker in them.
I couldn't agree more. And yes, I mean, that first time, I was so nervous. I can just see those first presentations. And I did a lot of training. Yes, you just have to do it, as you rightly say. It's practice, 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 practice. It's not something that you can read in a book and just do. You just have to get out there and do it. It's like playing an instrument, playing golf, sports, whatever. Steve, this has been enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I know listeners, you're going to have to listen to this again because Steve shared a lot of golden nuggets throughout the whole interview. And listeners, if your book isn't selling the way you wanted or expected to, let's jump on a quick call together to brainstorm ways to ramp up those sales, because you've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy, and it's time you got the return you were hoping for. Go to bookmarketingbrainstorm.com to schedule your free call. And in the meantime, I hope this powerful interview sparks some ideas you can use to sell more books. Until next week, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.